guys hear? So Mike Tyson has been smoking toad saliva
Okay.
past
Yes,
5
you
years.
said this.
Toad venom. What is like? I obviously I know what toad venom is, but like, why is
Do
this
you
a
really?
common drug?
It's a very uncommon drug, that's for sure. It's basically DMT. So DMT is the drug that like Joe Rogan talks about all the time too. It is like you smoke it and you literally go into another dimension made out of geometric patterns.
What the fuck?
And most people comment on the fact that there's like someone, like a thing on the other side when you go into that dimension, and they're kind of like you very much feel that presence. And a lot of times people come back like a completely changed person because they had a talk with like a outer dimensional being. So he was smoking it about 3 times a day, he says, which is just insane. But
Most people smoke it once and it changes their life forever, and they're like, I don't even need tobacco anymore.
yeah, so like ayahuasca is
Yeah,
like
oh, yeah.
you go into like the Amazon jungle, and it's like it's still a chemical compound that's comes down to DMT, but just a different version of it. But like this is a huge ritual that people go in to like the forest and get like a shaman to like bless this trip. And yeah, he was smoking a more powerful version of that and just like casually doing it. But ever since we've been talking about Mike Tyson a bit more, because he's supposed to be fighting the Jake Paul or whatever. Looking
Logan
into
Paul.
him. Logan Paul. Yeah, fuck one of them.
Same Paul.
One of
Who
those
cares?
fucking white kids. But yeah, dude, that guy, he does a lot of drugs. Like, I was watching a podcast he was on, I think again with Logan Paul or something like that. And he literally does like 4 grams of mushrooms, like right on the show.
Just fucking
Yeah.
petting his pigeon.
He's a crazy guy.
Well, what do you when you're that rich, what is there to do?
Yeah. Question your own reality.
Well,
Like,
well, it's a combination of rich, but with Mike Tyson, like, because I've listened to his podcast and kind of I went into his backstory a little bit more just to kind of understand him, because he's known as the most powerful, scary person in the entire world, and then
Yeah.
you see viral clips of him crying, talking about his feelings, and you're like, okay, there's clearly some kind of divide.
Yeah, well, there's a pretty big difference between like the old Tyson and
Yes.
then the newer version of Tyson too, right? But
Yeah, and like a big part was when he was a kid, he was just a scared little boy that got attacked and was beat up, and then he got a trainer that taught him how to fight, and then started hypnotizing him to make him into a warrior and saying like, you're gonna fight for like your goal is to kill this guy. That's your goal every time you get into a ring. So then that's all his life. The only thing he knew that love could come from was beating the shit out of people. So he did that forever, and then when it was done, he was kind of like, what do I do now? Like, there's a whole new world I have to do, and he's like, I'm gonna take every drug I can and figure out where I am, figure out who I am. Am I actually this person? Am I still hypnotized? Are the drugs hypnotizing me now? Like, where am I? And if you're taking three things of DMT in a day, like, I don't think he's ever gonna find them. Like, he's somebody new.
well, I mean, yeah,
He might be God. He might be God's brother, like a bodyguard.
an ego death is a very eye-opening experience. So I can really imagine that he is just, with the amount of power and finances that he has, he's just able to have ego deaths as like a casual pastime.
Yeah.
Which is insane because they're profound, right? And he's just casually doing it.
So I've never done drugs, but when I hear stories like this, I'm like, man, that sounds kind of cool,
Bro.
Like, how do I die without doing that?
Yeah,
at
ego
the
death.
Like,
the
at the
weirdest
same
thing ever.
time, the whole idea is one of the reasons why I don't do drugs at all. Period. So like, would I really even want to? I don't think so. But like, sounds cool.
Man, I think everyone should experience an ego death. It's unexplainable. It's weird.
So ego death, is that mushrooms, acid, like that kind of trip, or is it only specific?
Yeah, I usually it kind of relates to like, I guess, how high you actually get off of the drug. Because you can do like mushrooms, or you can do acid, you can do a small amount, and like everything gets colorful or everything gets kind of wavy. You start giggling quite a bit. But if you up the dosage, eventually you kind of break past this filter of the persona that you have grown up with. You forget to turn that on while you're acting as like just a normal
What?
human. So
That
like
sounds wild.
every decision that you make throughout your entire life or throughout your entire day, it's all based off of the experiences that you have. Everything that makes you who you are. So when you make a decision, you're basing that decision off of, based on the choices that I've made in my life, I'm going to choose this option. So once you get high enough on psychedelics, you kind of forget about that part. So then it kind of turns into, okay, if I was a human, what kind of decision would a human make, rather than what kind of decision would I make as a person? And
Okay.
it's very, very eye-opening. Like, you just kind of look at everything as a whole very differently.
I'm intrigued.
It's
That's pretty
it's weird,
intense.
man. Yeah.
And like even thinking about for me, like I don't do any drugs like past weed just because my family's had a lot of drug problems. So, but like what Dustin said with ayahuasca and DMT, those things they sound they sound like something I want to try, because then it kind of might open a door that I didn't know I had, or like kind of, because I've always had like just different mental things, and if I maybe turn those off for a second and like look clearly at just who I am, maybe I choose a different path, and like maybe I choose this or that. But as of now, the ego is saying like, well, I know if I do that, it could work that way, or I could go the way that like my family's gone, and I could end up on the streets of Vancouver and be okay with that because I just lost everything and I'm crazy. So
Yeah,
that's the scary part for
I
me.
doubt any of the people on the streets of Vancouver are there because of like mushrooms. If they were, they probably had some psychological issues anyways.
And that's
but-
that's the part that I'm talking about, is that it might open that
but
up
I
for me.
mean, it's like there's not very many recorded cases of people legitimately going crazy from these types of drugs. So it's a lot safer than a lot of people think it is.
So the
Just has a
cancer
bad
that I
rap.
had, nobody gets it when they're almost an adult. It was only for little kids. So this is why everything freaks me out, because the things that aren't supposed to happen to me.
Yeah.
Like it just,
That's fair.
it always scares me, that kind of shit. But that's yet again, if we didn't have my ego, you didn't have your ego, we could just say, this sounds cool, we'd go do it. We wouldn't think like,
yeah.
oh, what I do in my past?
So you're
what
talking
about, the
about
future?
like you don't know if it would open up a doorway. So an ego death is kind of the realization that you're just standing in a pile of doors. Like there's just doors everywhere, but we can't see any of them because we're too hyper focused on one single spot of consciousness that's on the plane of reality. Whoa.
I'm fucked up right now.
This is the highest Dustin's ever been.
Yeah, I just fucked with your mind, boy.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not ready for this.
I'm not ready.
But yeah, I could
Jeez.
definitely see how somebody like Mike Tyson, or like when like Joe Rogan, those big players, like you said, they can take it, and if it changes their entire life, they're fine. They can quit everything they're doing and do something new because they're already set up financially, and most people will follow them because they're already invested in their future.
Yeah. A big problem with it is once you realize the potential of your mind, and then you kind of come back down to reality, and then you realize, oh wait, I'm trapped because I've been living with this fucking ego my whole life, and I've got all of these obligations and I can't do anything about them. So to be able to have that experience where you have this life-changing realization, and then you wake up the next day and go, yeah, I'm going to follow through on that. I'm just going to be a different person now because I wasn't enjoying the experience of who I thought I was before. And then you just have that, I don't know, pleasure of now being a different version of yourself.
So with that being
Whoa.
said, is that where like the psilocybin trials, we had talked about them before, is that kind of, because it sounds like if I had depression, or if I had like severe anxiety or something,
Yeah.
that could be a little bit of a, hey, it's just you. It like,
Very
because
much
obviously
so.
there's sometimes it's in your brain, you have different things going on, but if it just kind of shows you that second door where like, yeah, this one's you depressed and this one's you okay, if you just go and do this stuff, you'll be fine.
Yeah. So like the scientific expression of the neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you have certain thoughts, the more those two thoughts kind of go hand in hand, right? Kind of thing,
Okay.
right? So if you're always depressed and everything makes you sad, the fact that everything makes you sad is what then also makes you depressed, and it kind of goes back and forth. So with like psilocybin specifically, it actually changes the blood flow in your brain. So all of the normal pathways that all of the neurons that are really used to firing together, they stop firing together completely, and a bunch of neurons that don't really activate very often will actually get blood going to them. So a lot of times people will do mushrooms and they'll have like traumatic childhood experiences get brought back up because there are these like deep thoughts that they haven't thought about in years and years, but the mushrooms allow the blood flow within your brain to move to different locations, right? So then you start bringing up different emotions and different experiences that you kind of been subconsciously hiding from yourself, and it allows you to open up to those experiences because then you're a lot more open to contemplate those experiences as well, right? So it's there's a lot of trials behind the effectiveness of like therapy for psilocybin specifically. It's pretty crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know how to go on.
I don't know, but
I think we might need to.
I'm like,
this is the next part. Here's your mushrooms.
Yeah, I'm like, damn, like I don't even know where to go with this.
Do I even like my life?
Yeah, honestly,
I don't even want to do this.